Hey everyone, have you ever wondered what the most misunderstood job in entertainment would be? Well, let me tell you about the 4 months you spent working as a sensory experience guide at Universal Studios in Orlando, Florida. And trust me, by the end of this story, you'll understand why you can never use the words immersive experience without cringing internally. This is the story of how you took what seemed like an innovative job helping guests with sensory disabilities and ended up in situations so awkward that you still have nightmares about them. And before we dive into this Florida chaos, if you're not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button right now, smash that like button because this story is absolutely wild, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our insane stories. All right, let's get into it. So here's how this whole mess started. You're living in Orlando, working part-time at a regular retail job in the Florida Mall, barely making ends meet when you see this job posting on Indeed. Universal Studios seeking accessibility specialist, sensory experience guide. Help guests with sensory processing needs enjoy the park. $22 an hour plus park benefits. You've always been interested in accessibility work, you think it sounds meaningful, and $22 an hour in Orlando is actually decent. You apply immediately. 2 weeks later, you're sitting in an interview room at Universal with a hiring manager named Jennifer who explains the position. She tells you that Universal has created a new program for guests with sensory processing disorders, autism, or other conditions that make the typical theme park experience overwhelming. Your job would be to guide these guests through the park, helping them navigate crowds, preparing them for loud noises or bright lights, and generally making their experience more comfortable. It sounds amazing. It sounds important. You accept on the spot. They send you to a week-long training that covers disability awareness, sensory processing disorders, de-escalation techniques, and park operations. You feel like you're about to do something genuinely good in the world. Your first day on the job, you're wearing your special blue vest that says Sensory Experience Guide with your name tag, you've got your radio, your backpack full of noise-canceling headphones and fidget toys for guests who need them, and you're stationed near the park entrance, waiting for your first client. A family approaches, mom, dad, and their 10-year-old son who has autism. The parents explain that their son loves Harry Potter but gets overwhelmed by crowds and sudden noises. Perfect, this is exactly what you trained for. You spend the next 4 hours guiding this family through Hogsmeade, warning the kid before any loud animatronics activate, finding quiet spots when he needs breaks, helping him avoid the most crowded areas. It sounds amazing. It sounds important. You accept on the spot. They send you to a week-long training that covers disability awareness, sensory processing disorders, de-escalation techniques, and park operations. You feel like you're about to do something genuinely good in the world. Your first day on the job, you're wearing your special blue vest that says Sensory Experience Guide with your name tag, you've got your radio, your backpack full of noise-canceling headphones and fidget toys for guests who need them, and you're stationed near the park entrance waiting for your first client. A family approaches, mom, dad, and their 10-year-old son who has autism. The parents explain that their son loves Harry Potter but gets overwhelmed by crowds and sudden noises. Perfect, this is exactly what you trained for. You spend the next 4 hours guiding this family through Hogsmeade, warning the kid before any loud animatronics activate, finding quiet spots when he needs breaks, helping him avoid the most crowded areas. The family is incredibly grateful. They tip you $20 even though you're not supposed to accept tips, and you feel amazing. You think you found your calling. But then comes week 2, and you get your first unusual client. A woman, probably early 30s, comes up to you at your station and says she has severe sensory sensitivity and needs a guide for the day. You ask about her specific needs, and she says she's just very sensitive to touch, sound, and visual stimulation and needs someone to help her navigate the park. Fine, sounds legitimate. You start walking with her through the park, and immediately you notice she's staying really close to you, like unnecessarily close. You're trying to guide her around a crowd, and she grabs your arm. You think, okay, maybe she's genuinely anxious about crowds. You continue. You're walking through Diagon Alley, explaining which shops are quieter, and she keeps touching your shoulder, your back, your arm, every time she talks to you. You're starting to feel uncomfortable, but you remind yourself that some people with sensory issues express themselves differently. Then you get to the Escape from Gringotts ride, and she asks, "Is this ride going to be intense? I need someone to hold on to." You explain the ride has some sudden movements and 3D effects that might be overwhelming. She says, maybe you should ride with me to help me stay calm? You explain that guides don't typically ride with guests unless it's a child or someone who truly can't ride alone. She seems disappointed but accepts it. After the ride, she comes out and says, that was so intense. I was shaking. I really needed someone there with me. Then she asks if you can take her somewhere quiet to calm down. You take her to a less crowded area near the lagoon, thinking she genuinely needs a break. She sits on a bench and pats the spot next to her. Sit with me. I just need a minute. You sit, maintaining professional distance. She starts talking about how grateful she is for your help, how you're so attentive, how you have a calming presence. It's all starting to feel less like accessibility support and more like something else. When your shift ends, she asks for your personal number in case she needs guidance again. You politely decline, give her the General Park Services number, and leave feeling weird. You mention it to Jennifer the next day, and she sighs. Yeah, unfortunately, we've had a few people try to abuse the service. Some people think sensory guide means personal, attractive companion for the day. Just maintain professionalism, and if anyone gets too inappropriate, radio security. You're shocked that this is common enough that she has a protocol for it, but you nod and promise to stay alert. Week 3 brings new challenges. You're assigned to guide a bachelorette party. Yes, a whole bachelorette party claimed they all have sensory processing issues and need a guide.
You're immediately skeptical, but you can't just refuse service based on assumptions. You meet them at the entrance. 6 women in their mid-20s wearing matching Bride Tribe shirts, clearly already buzzed from drinking at City Walk. The bride announces, "We heard you guides are super helpful and attentive," with this tone that makes you deeply uncomfortable. You start the tour, explaining park layout and offering sensory accommodations. They're not interested. Instead, they keep asking you personal questions. Do you have a girlfriend? How old are you? Do you work out? You try to redirect to the park features, but they're relentless. At one point, one of them says, "Can you explain that ride to me, but get really close so I can hear you over the crowd?" There is no crowd. You're in an empty queue area. You explain from a normal distance. They giggle. The worst part comes when they want a photo. "Can you take a picture of us?" "Sure, that's normal." You take their photo. "Now, can you be in the photo with us?" "Okay, slightly weird, but maybe they just want proof they had a guide." You get in the photo. "No, closer. Put your arms around us." Now you're trapped in a photo with 6 drunk women hanging all over you while a stranger takes the picture with their phone. You know this photo is going to end up on social media with some caption you don't want to think about. After 3 hours of this, you fake a radio call and hand them off to another guide, claiming you have an emergency client. Your coworker Marcus laughs when you explain, "Bro, welcome to the weird side of this job." Week 4 is when things get truly bizarre. You're assigned to help a couple, both in their 40s, who claim they both have sensory processing issues. You meet them, start the tour, and immediately notice they're way more interested in each other than in anything you're saying. They're constantly touching each other, whispering, giggling. You're trying to explain accessibility features of the Mummy ride, and they're literally making out next to you. You clear your throat, they stop briefly, apologize, then continue. You realize they're using the sensory guide service as like a weird private tour with a third wheel they can ignore. They're not listening to anything you say about managing sensory overload, they're just using you as a human fast pass. At one point, you're standing outside the Transformers ride explaining something, and the woman turns to you and says, "You know what's great about this service? It's so intimate. Just the 3 of us experiencing things together." The way she says intimate makes you want to run away. The husband adds, "Yeah, it's almost like we're all on this journey together, you know?" You finish their tour as quickly as possible and immediately go to Jennifer. "Jennifer, I think people are using this service for date experiences or something. It's getting really uncomfortable." She admits that yes, they've noticed some guests are abusing the program. The marketing team had used phrases like personalized, intimate park experience and one-on-one guidance without realizing how that would be interpreted.
They're working on new language, but in the meantime, you just have to deal with it. Great. By week 5, you've developed a thick skin and a set of defensive strategies. When someone gets too close, you step back while pretending to check something on your tablet. When someone asks personal questions, you redirect with park trivia. When someone suggests you join them on a ride, you claim you get motion sickness. You've become a master of professional boundaries, but it's exhausting. Then you get assigned to what will become the most infamous tour of your career. A social media influencer with 2 million followers wants a sensory guide for her theme park accessibility vlog series. Management is thrilled because it's great PR. You're assigned to be her guide, and you're nervous because you know whatever happens will be broadcast to millions of people. She arrives with a cameraman, and immediately you can tell she doesn't actually need sensory accommodations. She's loud, seeks out the most stimulating rides, wants to be in the most crowded areas, but she keeps the camera on you constantly. So tell my followers, what does a sensory guide do? She shoves the camera in your face. You explain professionally about helping guests with sensory processing needs. And do you do anything they need? She asks with this emphasis on anything that feels loaded. You clarify that you help with park navigation and sensory accommodations within professional boundaries. But if I needed someone to hold my hand through a scary ride? You explain that physical contact is limited to necessary guiding, like helping someone navigate a crowd. She seems disappointed that you're not playing along with whatever angle she wanted. Throughout the day, she keeps trying to create moments for her vlog. Let's do a bit where you have to comfort me after a scary ride. Can you explain this ride while standing really close to me so we're both in frame? Do a demonstration of how you'd help someone who's having a sensory meltdown. You maintain professionalism, but you can see in her eyes that she thinks you're boring. Her video comes out 2 weeks later titled My Intense Day with a Universal Studios Sensory Guide, and the thumbnail is a screenshot of you looking uncomfortable. The comments are full of people saying you look dead inside and making jokes about how the job broke you. You become a meme in theme park communities. Great. Week 6, and now people are coming to the park specifically requesting you as their guide because they saw the video. Management thinks this is fantastic. You think this is a nightmare.
You're getting requests from people who clearly don't need sensory accommodations, but just want the experience of having a guide. You start doing more thorough screenings, asking specific questions about their needs, and declining service to people who clearly don't qualify. This pisses off management, but you don't care anymore. You got into this job to help people who genuinely need it, not to be a theme park accessory for influencers and bachelorette parties. And before I wrap this up, I need to know from you guys, have you ever had a job where people completely misunderstood what you do and made it super uncomfortable? Or have you worked in customer service and dealt with people who clearly had ulterior motives? Drop your stories in the comments because I'm dying to know if anyone else has experienced this kind of thing. By month 3, you found your groove. You're excellent at identifying guests who genuinely need help versus those who are abusing the system. You've developed scripts for deflecting inappropriate comments. You've built a small group of regular families you help who truly appreciate the service. And those experiences remind you why you took this job. There's the kid with autism who went on his first roller coaster because you prepared him for every sensation. There's the elderly woman with PTSD who was able to enjoy the park with her grandkids because you helped her avoid triggering situations. These are the moments that matter. But you've also compiled a mental list of the weirdest experiences. The woman who asked if you could shield her with your body during a parade because the confetti was too stimulating. The guy who wanted you to describe every ride in sensory detail, which somehow always ended up sounding vaguely inappropriate no matter how clinical you tried to be. The teenager who was clearly sent by his friends as a prank and spent the whole time trying not to laugh while claiming to be overwhelmed by colors. Month 4, and Universal announces they're restructuring the sensory guide program. After reviewing feedback and incidents, they're limiting it to guests with documented disabilities and children under 16.
You're being transferred to regular guest services unless you want to stay as a sensory guide with the new restrictions. You choose to transfer. You're relieved. You'll miss helping the guests who genuinely needed you, but you won't miss the awkwardness, the misunderstandings, and the constant feeling of being someone's weird theme park date that they didn't ask for. Your last week as a sensory guide, several of your regular families come to say goodbye. They bring you cards, small gifts, and genuinely heartfelt thanks. One mom tells you that you changed her son's life by making the park accessible for him. These moments make all the worth it. Almost. What did you learn from this experience?
First, any job with words like personal, intimate, or sensory in the description will attract people with very different interpretations of what that means. Second, accessibility services are incredibly important but need clear boundaries and verification processes. Third, social media has ruined everything by making people think every job is content for their followers. Fourth, Florida is weird, and Orlando tourism industry jobs are even weirder. Fifth, you have way more patience than you ever thought possible. Sixth, always clarify job descriptions before accepting positions because sensory guide can mean very different things to different people. You also learned about yourself. You learned you can maintain professionalism even when people are being wildly inappropriate. You learned that meaningful work sometimes comes with uncomfortable situations, and you have to decide if the meaning outweighs the discomfort. You learned that you genuinely care about accessibility and helping people, even when some people abuse the system. And you learned that you never, ever want to hear the phrase, "Can you make this more immersive for me?" ever again. Today, 6 months later, you're working regular guest services at Universal. You help people find bathrooms, explain park maps, and resolve basic issues. It's boring compared to the sensory guide job, but it's also blissfully drama-free. Nobody asks you to hold their hand, nobody tries to get your personal number, nobody makes weird comments about your attentive nature. You can just do your job without constantly wondering if someone is misinterpreting every word you say. But you do miss some aspects. You miss seeing kids light up when they finally feel comfortable enough to enjoy a ride. You miss helping people who genuinely needed what you offered. You miss feeling like you were doing something important. The new team of sensory guides, all working under the new stricter guidelines, sometimes ask you for advice. You tell them, trust your gut, maintain boundaries, and remember that most people are genuine, but the ones who aren't will stick in your memory way more than they should. Your friends still tease you about it. Every time someone mentions Universal Studios, someone inevitably says, "Oh, like where you were the sensory guide," with exaggerated emphasis, followed by laughs. You've learned to laugh too. It's objectively funny that you had a job helping people with sensory processing, and somehow it became the most sensory overwhelming job you've ever had, just in completely different ways than intended. But you do miss some aspects. You miss seeing kids light up when they finally feel comfortable enough to enjoy a ride. You miss helping people who genuinely needed what you offered. You miss feeling like you were doing something important. The new team of sensory guides, all working under the new stricter guidelines, sometimes ask you for advice. You tell them, trust your gut, maintain boundaries, and remember that most people are genuine, but the ones who aren't will stick in your memory way more than they should. Your friends still tease you about it. Every time someone mentions Universal Studios, someone inevitably says, "Oh, like where you were the sensory guide," with exaggerated emphasis, followed by laughs. You've learned to laugh too. It's objectively funny that you had a job helping people with sensory processing, and somehow it became the most sensory overwhelming job you've ever had, just in completely different ways than intended. You still occasionally see your video memes circulating on theme park TikTok. POV, you're a sensory guide and another bachelorette party just requested you, with your dead-eyed expression from that influencer's video. You've made peace with it. At least you're internet famous for something, even if it's for looking absolutely done with life while standing in front of Hogwarts Castle. So that's it, everyone. The completely true, only slightly exaggerated story of how you became a sensory experience guide at Universal Studios and learned that helping people with sensory needs is important work, but also that any job can be made uncomfortable if enough people misunderstand what you're supposed to be doing. If you enjoyed this wild ride through theme park employment chaos, absolutely demolish that like button, share this with your friends who work in customer service and understand the struggle, and subscribe if you haven't already, because we've got more insane job stories coming. Thanks for watching, and remember, if a job sounds too good to be true, it might just be too weird to be normal. See you in the next one, and may your careers be less sensory overwhelming than mine was.